Everybody, welcome to I'm Greg Avola. We're going to talk about Untappd beer and style data. It's going to give a little time for everyone to come into the conversation, and we'll start up pretty soon. All right, let's get started here. So my name is Greg Avola. We'll get into a little bit about myself and what I do. But today we're talking about consumer style preferences over the last 10 years of Untappd data, basically looking at some of the Untappd data that shows us how style preferences have changed and what is the top style going forward. So let's kick it off and get rolling. All right, so who am I? So my name is Greg Avola. I'm the co-founder of Untappd. I'm the chief creative officer of Untappd. I founded it back in October of 2010. This is our 10th year of actually doing Untappd, so it's pretty crazy to see how that has come through the years. I live in Connecticut. Our headquarters for Untappd is located in Wilmington, North Carolina. So that's where our main office is, but I work remotely in Connecticut. Prior to Untappd, I worked at various jobs, but my main one before that was a senior software engineer at ABC News. So I did a lot of website stuff for the abcnews.go.com or abcnews.com, I think it is now. I'm so glad I'm not part of the team right now with the election coming up. It'd be pretty crazy going on there, but did a few elections in my year there. I love data. It's what we're talking about today, and seeing the trends and analysis within the Untappd data perspective, modeling and engineering. That's my background from that perspective. And then my claim to fame, if you don't consider Untappd to be the claim to fame, is that I was on Man vs. Food a long time ago for like 6 seconds with a friend of mine was actually eating with Rad Richmond for there. So, this is me a long time ago. They had to do this take about 10 times. My wife is a theater actor. She did it in once. They put me in the show. They didn't put her in the show. So you can imagine that it was pretty crazy from that side. So in case you don't know, let's get into what Untappd is, in case you're just kind of discovering for the first time. So Untappd was founded back in 2010. We are a social beer network. We aim to be your median between the digital world and the physical world when it comes to beer drinking, whether you're looking to discover new beer, discover new places, or anything of that nature. You can check in our beers, add locations, earn badges, and share with friends. We have a social aspect that allows you to kind of keep track of what you had, where you had it, and see where your friends are located. We also sell software as a service to bars and restaurants and breweries for marketing materials and also menu publishing. It's a great opportunity for bars and restaurants to be able to kind of leverage our platform for our beer database to make menu publishing much easier. We have a wide range of beers already in the platform. You have to create your information. We get all of our labels, descriptions, all that stuff, so it makes it a lot easier. We also have digital boards that you can get as well that are part of that package that are really cool to be able to see all your beers that you have currently on draft up on the board. People can see their faces as they check in. It's a pretty cool thing. So that's what we also do as well at untappd.com/business. So Untappd Community is really where we focus a lot of attention on, is mainly to cultivate the community, build features, listen to feedback, and be able to kind of push the boundaries forward with bringing new and innovative products to the community to better use on the Untappd platform. And we have close to 9 million users on the platform with over 930 million check-ins in the 10 years we've been doing this. We would have probably hit close to 1 billion this year if it wasn't for COVID, but at the same time, it's pretty amazing to see the kind of growth everywhere, not just the United States, but all over the world with our application there. From that perspective there, we have over 2.2 million commercial beers in our database. We started with an open source beer database of around 5,000 people and 5,000 beers. And we've kind of been able to move that up from the users being able to add stuff to our database to close to 2.2 commercial million beers on there. Now, that doesn't represent the home brewers that we also allow on the platform. So if you have a home brewer, you want to put your beer on Untappd, you can certainly do that as well. That number just represents the commercially available beers in the system that have not been deleted or merged. We have close to 183,000 breweries in the site. That also doesn't include only commercial breweries, not home brewers. So you can see the growth of that over the years. And it's amazing to see all those brewers worldwide continue to grow. On our Untappd business platform, we have close to 20,000 people using the platform today. Even given COVID, from what's going on right now, we offer QR menus as well. People can scan it from the Untappd app or their camera to see their menu on the platform. So it's a great way to kind of continue to build that forward and provide services and tools for people to use during this time. All right. So ultimately, when thinking about this presentation here, it's all about trying to understand consumer preference and what they want. I mean, that's what people want to use Untappd for, and also that's what brewers want to be able to do in the future. They want to know what consumers want. It's very hard for a smaller brewery or someone that doesn't have a lot of focus group testing to understand the landscape of brewing. Now, we all know that IPAs and everything else are prominent, and many brewers will say if we don't make a hazy IPA, then you're not going to make any money. But outside those IPA and nutritional standards, how does a brewery make a decision what style of beer to focus their attention on to go? It's a hard thing to realize. You can do some focus group testing. You can look around the industry. You can see what your peers are doing. But how do you get a wider range of everything that's happening within the ecosystem? And that's where Untappd data comes into play. We're hungry for data here. We're looking at all the products that are out there and all the data coming into Untappd. And we're trying to put it in a perspective where we can basically take the data that's come together and basically formulate it in a way where users come in and learn more about what data makes decisions on their behalf. So, style preference, rating preference, sentiment analysis on individual check-in comments. What moves the needle from a brewery perspective? We look at the brewing industry as a very non-technical in the past, where it's more about making beer for the community, which it still is. But we feel that with the Untappd data and the data we capture, we're able to have a better picture for breweries to be able to figure out where, when, and how are you going to be able to focus your attention on. So just like this picture of Cookie Monster, I'm hungry for data. I'm constantly looking for trends in the Untappd data analysis, trying to pinpoint exactly when Oktoberfest beers become popular in the situation, and when how those pumpkin beers also become popular, because sometimes those are in late July, early August, and you're asking yourself, where are those pumpkins made? How is it all coming together? That's some of the data that we kind of look at from that side to see what's going on within that preference there. So ultimately, this whole project of doing this analysis on style data came back to our 10th anniversary celebration. So, one of the things that it's really cool in the industry is that we're actually able to celebrate 10 years being part of this beer cult community, and we're so happy to be part of it. But ultimately, one has been really big for the 10th anniversary. You don't get that to that point in your career or your app life cycle very often. It's very odd for an app to actually last for 10 years and still be, in the top of mind for discussion. So we really want to go above and beyond. Now, obviously, with COVID, we couldn't hold any physical parties. We are holding a virtual party, if interested, on October 24th for our Untappd 10th anniversary party. Find more information about that at untappd.com/10. But we partnered with Dogfish Head and we said, hey, look, there's been a lot of successful campaigns out there like Black is Beautiful and All Together that have a great initiative that they're going after. We want to celebrate with the entire Untappd community. We want to bring something to them that they can actually physically gain, a tangible item. And, we can't do a party everywhere because it's just not possible. So we partnered with them to produce a beer called I Remember My First Check-In, which is a celebration beer for our 10 years. And we basically want to figure out what style should be that beer. And we said, well, what better way to use the Untappd data to see exactly what that top style is across the board. So I got to sit down with Sam from Dogfish Head. Think about the data. And he said, hey, look, Greg, look at the data, see what's important, and we'll come back and figure out a recipe for the style. We're not a brewer here, and we're not part of the brewing process. So we had to partner with a very well-reputed brewery to get that data to the users so that they can actually make this beer and spread it to everyone can make across the board. So we're super excited about it. If you're interested in hearing more about this project too, head over to untappd.com/10. You can read more about how this project started. But this is the data that we use for this presentation to help facilitate the growth of this particular beer. So ultimately, you ask the question, where do we start? There are so many data points on Untappd in terms of what can we pull together to actually make it a much more great experience for the end user on that side. So, we look at three identifying pieces of the puzzle. We looked at style popularity per year, which is defined as basically looking at data over the last 10 years and seeing when the style rank of all the styles together and ranking them and seeing the progressive or decreasing value of how they moved inside that list over the last 10 years. That gives an idea of not only popularity, but interest. And that rank is basically done by number of unique users checking in that particular beer. So we rank all the styles from the year 1 to year 10 and figure out how many moves they make between each one of them to get a better idea of their popularity. Then we look at sentiment analysis. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have sentiment analysis for the full 10 years. We only had the last 2 years based on some of the technologies that came out that allowed us to do this. But sentiment is really defined when we look at the check-in comment. for positive or negative or neutral words to see if not only the rating or the actual style increase, but did the actual feeling from the user increase or decrease based on the data coming back from us. We use a product from AWS or Amazon Web Services that be able to take the text that are entered into the review within a certain character limit and run it through an algorithm to see if they're actually positive, negative, or neutral. And we rank those against all the styles that are coming in. And then finally, ratings. We got to look at ratings. Ratings are a big part of what Untappd is all about. It's important to see what those ratings looked at. Now, we want to look at more neutral ratings. So we looked at the last 2 years of data as opposed to the 10 years of data. The reason why we did that is because we changed the way that we did ratings back in 2016. Well, prior to that, all ratings for one beer was captured by one user. So that means if I checked in a beer 10 times, I only get one rating. Now, fast forward to today, you still get one rating, but all your check-ins are actually averaged together to get that one rating. So you can have one check-in have a 4.5 and one check-in have a 3.75. It would average together for your overall beer score. But we wanted to look at the overall check-ins from that perspective, the last 2 years of data to get that information. So let's dive right in here. Let's look at the style popularity per year. Here's the criteria that we looked at. We started at 2013 because back in 2010 and 2011 and 2012, our style database wasn't as good as it was today. So we started with 2013, moved our way forward. Obviously, 2020 is a partial year because we're 2/3 of the way through it. We look at the fields that we want to compute for here. The total number of check-ins, total unique users, and the total unique beers. We want to see how many total check-ins does that style have in that year, how many unique users tried a beer of that style in that year, and how many total beers were checked into during that particular time period. We also looked at how many beers were created in that time period too to kind of diff those together to get a good representation of the number of beers in population for that particular endeavor. Sorted by unique users to show population. So we want to show by the power of the unique users to get in the perspective of what exactly is the most popular beer by a user. We find popularity on Untappd as a piece that you look at from a perspective of wanting to find the most popular beer. Now, if a user checks in 100 times the same beer, that's not really popular. It's just one user in that person's taste. So popularity for them is more about looking at it from a user perspective on there. So with that said, we basically came up with this particular graph here. So we ranked, again, the number of moves we defined below. Increase gets defined by the positive or negative change or move in the top style list compared year over year. The higher number of moves means it increases more and more times. Obviously, the number one here is New England IPAs. I mean, that's been a huge hazy IPAs benefit to the community and the industry. It's been blown away since it was probably in the late 2017-18 period. So it moved the most amount of time with there. The biggest change that we saw when we took out the IPA is sours. Sours with 148 moves across the board. It's also on, the IPA sour and the sour goes on this list as well, also making a move, and also the sour fruited. So if you take away the IPAs, which are standard, sours really bubbled up at the top here. They are definitely the highest moving style year over year. We're looking at this data across the board. So it's really interesting to see how this perspective comes together when looking at moves over the overall unique styles per user across the board. So very cool stuff there. Next, we look at the style increase average per year. So we wanted to see how much the average would increase with a minimum of 10,000 check-ins in a 7-year per style. So you couldn't have styles that basically had 10 check-ins to 100 check-ins that would skew the system from that perspective. Again, we look at 2013 to 2020 on that partial year to look at that. We want to look at the average percentage increase per year. So how many times more check-ins did it increase every single year, average check-ins per year, and the total unique beers also made in that particular area. We sorted again by the largest growth, by the highest increase year over year. That was our kind of a target there. So we want to see exactly, okay, it's great that they moved up and down that list, but show us the increases average per year across the board. And that was kind of interesting to see. So we fast forward again. Here's the average increase from 2013 to 2020 in percent of average check-ins year over year and the average check-ins per year. So we have the first column here, which is the IPA and hard seltzers. We've talked about this before, and if you're in the beer community, you know the hard seltzers are a big thing. But year-over-year average percent increase is almost 1,100% increase from year over year. Crazy amount. Milkshake is another one of those. It's a newer style to our database, but it also increased the most amount in the year across the board. Then we move on to the IPAs we talked about before, but the IPA sours, the gozas, the sour fruited, they're definitely increasing over time. They have a large percentage of check-ins over a year and over 100%, almost 200% increase across the board. So As we just described here, an average percentage year-to-year is defined as an average increase or decrease to check-ins to styles over that year. So it's really crazy to see that kind of growth across the board when it comes to these styles. I definitely didn't think hard seltzers had a big impact. I mean, you obviously see them all over the place, but now the data really proves that value there of the 1,100% increase year over year. It's pretty amazing from that side. It's only growing, and can you see how that plays out across the board. Also, what was surprising with this list is the cider, with which we've seen a huge increase, almost 168% increase year over year across the board, growing very, very fast, but not in large numbers as you see for the average check-ins per year. That shows that it has big, big potential, but not a wider net from that perspective. Look at something like the IPA New England, over 2.8 million check-ins per year average. That's a huge increase and a huge number of people, but you can see a big increase in other styles across the board. So really cool information to look at that from that side. Ultimately, we looked at the sentiment per year per style. I think this is important to understand that sentiment is an important retrospect to brewers and understanding how people's comments relate to their ratings. Sometimes you can have someone who gives a 5-star rating or a lower rating like that and puts a negative comment in the review about something. We average those out to kind of be a very important value. We look at a lot of beers that are highly rated on Untappd with a low potential sentiment. This leads to a lot of discussion about beer quality. We see a lot of beers that are really a 5 or 4 or 5 getting a negative sentiment review on Untappd because maybe the bad batch came out or someone didn't clean their tap lines. So we look at this sentiment data as very, very key to our aspect, look at the entire realm of what Untappd is and the data it provides. So again, like we said earlier, we look at 2 years of data, 2019 and the rest of 2020. So look at the sentiment analysis data to see how prominent styles are within the sense. So again, sentiment analysis on Untappd only captured when there's 75 check-ins or more. That's 30% of the max that was allowed on the Untappd platform. Again, a minimum of 10,000 check-ins are required for a particular style. So it weeds out the other ones that are probably not as relevant from a data analysis perspective. And again, an analysis is 3 aspects of a check-in, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, or neutral. So we're looking at the actual sentiment of something that someone says, and we're giving it a percentage score based on what the AI equipment does, and it looks at the actual comment and says, hey, this is 75% positive, this is 75% neutral, or this is 70% negative. And that gives us a percentage of what the average is for that particular item. So for that, you look at the fields that we computed here, and we had the average false positive score, average positive score. So the average percentage of if that particular comment on that style was in a positive light, so that basically averages all of them up there. Total number of check-ins and total number of users. When we sorted this list by the average positive score, that gave us a percentage of what's happening within these styles itself. So we look at 2019 and compare them to 2020. This is really what we saw as an important aspect here. Obviously, you have your double milk stouts, your coffee stouts, your pearl stouts, your New England IPAs in there, and taking them out there. The biggest drawback that I saw is in 2020, the sour fruited is at 72% satisfaction score, as you can say. And the American Wild Ale is also something that is also on that high score as well. So for me, that just shows the realm of what's happening within the sour landscape. Incredibly popular, incredibly highly rated, and also highly responded from a comment perspective. Interesting other areas here is that, the traditional styles like lagers only had 50% of a positive score across the board. They didn't actually have that kind of score we look at 2020. So a lot of different variants here that are coming out of the woodwork, and we're seeing the positive scores coming from there. We use something called the natural language processor, which actually allow us to detach words and make them positive or negative based on the comments that are coming in. So it's really cool to see all this data show the popular styles, not just by rating, but by the ability for them to see what people are saying about that within the ecosystem itself. So very cool stuff across the board when it comes to this style references here. It's also cool as well to see the sour fruited and the sour Berliner Weiss, which were renamed a little bit later to fruited Berliner Weiss, are still highly thought out, even more than they were in 2019. So it's a pretty cool aspect to be able to show that, as we move forward within this data analysis there. So final but not by least, we're talking about the ratings. Now, it's a very important aspect. Look at ratings. They're a big part of what Untappd does. We'll look at the last 2 years of ratings to kind of look at this analysis to see what's happening and what the popular style in there. Again, a minimum of 50,000 check-ins we did for this one to really weed out the ones that are not highly populated. And we look at the computed score here, computed fields as the average rating score, whether it's 0.25 to 0.5. We look at those as the average. The total check-in of that particular style, total unique users, and the total of beers checked in for that style as well. So they're all in there. And I'm trying to sort it by the total unique users. So popularity again. We talked about popularity before being the definition across the board. So we're really looking at the data from a high-level perspective to see more reach on that particular spectrum when it comes to the rating score. And again, we broke it down by two values here, 2019 and 2020. Again, the IPAs have the highest average rating score, but remember they have the highest number of total check-ins across the board. So last year in 2020, almost 16 million, if I'm reading that right, number is coming from the IPA style itself. 16 million check-ins. That's pretty nuts. Obviously, with 2020, check-in counts are down because of COVID-19, but it still holds its highest value. But at the same time, it has the most highest user percentage checked in from that perspective in that time period. Almost 12 million users checked in, 16 million IPAs in 2019. Pretty crazy stuff. The thing that we took the most out of this analysis here is the sour fruited. It is 3.94. It didn't really exist in 2019 as a value. It moved more to a higher perspective number of total users checking in there than it did in the prior year. So that's obviously very important to show that growth, but very close to a 4.0, an average rating for all sour fruited across the board. We think this style is where the most popularity has come from the last couple of years, is that the sour coming into a sour fruited has given drinkers an opportunity to explore different taste profiles. Okay, more people from that are not drinking beer into drinking beer by this particular style itself. So again, really cool to see those numbers up there, sour fruited being pretty high. I originally thought this whole project, I really thought that Pilsners and lagers were making a comeback. I've always talked about this a lot on our virtual happy hour shows on Untappd TV, but we also have opportunity to talk to other industry professionals as well. And when it comes to everyone's like, hey, yeah, lagers and Pilsners are coming back. The data didn't really show that, to be honest with you, over the last couple of years. It shows a growth, but not as significant as some of the other ones like sours across the board. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of this in the future, but that was some of the runaways that I noticed when I actually looked at this from that side of the house, and really kind of looking deeper into this analysis and seeing the difference between people's rating styles across the board. Hefeweizen was an interesting one to me. It's a very popular style, a lot of check-ins and a lot of beers across the board, but kind of a 3.5 right on the middle score. Again, a lot has to do with hype as well. Breweries and beers that have a higher ABV and a higher, more prominent style like sours and IPAs tend to get higher ratings based on just the fact that people have more of them. But that's why I'm seeing more of the lagers and pilsners increase in style, increase in popularity, to be able to kind of put in this perspective across the board. So that's that. So here's some conclusions that I drew from this. Obviously, the sour styles have grown significantly in the last 5 years. IPA sours increased over 281% in terms of check-ins on an average per year over the last 7 years. And then sour styles are generally, people enjoy those styles, obviously. 72% positive scores on the review of their analysis and their sentiment. And then sour styles are generally high, 3.92, 3.94 among a large sample size of check-ins from that perspective. So this is the data we kind of use to provide back to Sam at Dogfish Head. Hey, these are what we think they're going to be more popular from a perspective. We didn't want to do an IPA. We didn't want to do Russian Imperial Stout. That had been done before in this collaborative beer project with the Black is Beautiful, which is a great initiative, as well as the Altogether beer from Altogether from Other Half, and obviously Black is Beautiful from Weathered Souls. So we want to try a different one of those styles. So we threw out those in the analysis, but included them in the spreadsheet so you can see where they lied in there. So sours obviously became a big factor in terms of what we believe that the style should be. And from that, that's what the style is. So the actual beer that's produced by Dogfish Head and over 100 brewers across the world is going to be a kettle sour or a fruited sour. You as the brewer obviously have the opportunity to take the individual beer recipe and you can actually make it to whatever you'd like. You can add any type of fruit or anything else to your particular blend. The recipe is very base. One of the cool things that we're doing to help kind of grow the economic stimulus of the brewing industry, not just for the brewers and the end users, is actually allowing breweries to actually have a local ingredient that's attached to their particular beer within 100 miles of their brewing location. Therefore, we're focusing more on local growth within the community and actually making this a full circle product across the board. So we use the data from Untappd to figure out what style it is. We use Dogfish Head to develop the recipe, and then we let every brewer around the world make it. And we even have the labels generated as well, so people can actually do it as well. So it was a really cool project to kind of go through to see the style preferences across the board from end user perspective, and see how that can turn into a beer. So we're actually putting our hypothesis to test. We find that people like sours. The data shows there's a positive increase over the year over year. So now the beer will be made, and we'll see if that hypothesis is correct. And we hope it is from the data that it shows from Untappd from that side. So that's pretty much the analysis that we came out of this particular project from that side. So I want to open up for questions here. If you have a question or anything else that you wanted to share across the platform, you can use on your own platform, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, or sorry, YouTube, to actually ask those questions there. My Twitter handle is below, @GregAvola, if you want to ask any questions after this. I see some questions coming through from the board here from Josh. Josh asked if do you think Pilsners and lagers are less checked in from the similar cool factor versus the new hype IPA and the haze IPA. It's definitely true that they have a much more hype factor for those styles. But what I say is that most every brewery makes a lager and a Pilsner. But I think it's overshadowed because people are looking for more of those crazier beers, the hazy IPAs from that perspective. And those are the ones people enjoy and like to drink into. So there is some of that aspect there. But looking at the analysis of the data, even comparing the overall ratings and the sentiment and the check-in score is still not as high as the other ones on there. So even at scale, it doesn't provide the same check-in point as well. But one can make the argument too, Josh, that it's because they're not actually highly thought out of. People automatically say, hey, a Pilsner, it's not getting a 4 on Untappd. That's for other beers. So that's more educational stuff that we hope to change in the app and educate people that, it's all about what you think about the beer, not the particular style from that piece there. Another question asked about taking into account regional country biases. We didn't visit this analysis. We just kind of kept it straight across the board. I think we use the analogy here, 3.7, and the same beers in the United States under the same name. There are different things that kind of populate to the top here, but I think we want to take on a wider range of what's happening within the brewer landscape and not segmented individual countries. But it'd be interesting to see average rating by country to see how that influences decisions across the board. Maybe that's something we look into for a future presentation across the board. The question again from Josh asked if the data is shown differently from a COVID-19 perspective. Absolutely. We definitely saw a pretty steep decrease in not only check-ins to the Untappd platform, but check-ins to public venues across the board. We posted a blog post at untappd.com/blog about all the data we saw from COVID. It has some great information in there about that the huge dip that we saw and the progressive reach from the brewery tap rooms and going back into the future and increasing that. We were going to probably hit about 1 billion check-ins this year based on our trajectory, which would have been a really cool thing to hit. But ultimately, COVID hit and that kind of destroyed a lot of that momentum going forward. But we're hopeful that things will get back to normal in the future and they'll be able to kind of progress forward with safety precautions and things of that nature. But it definitely has been a crazy time from a COVID perspective there. Well, with that, I want to thank everybody for watching, and hopefully this data was interesting to you. It was definitely cool putting it together to see kind of the range of the average check-in scores to sentiment analysis to styles across the board. There's a question just came in late about if this information is available in the app. This is not in the app. We're actually building out a data product from the Untappd ecosystem. So basically that would allow breweries to come to us and say, hey, I'd like to see data for a particular area, but we don't have any information just yet on that particular product, but it will be coming out in the future. So pay attention to our social feeds for that, because we definitely want to share this information with brewers to help them get a better understanding of what's happening in their ecosystem. We look at a lot of questions from brewers that say, hey, I'm opening up a new cidery across the board. Where should I target advertising for it? Where should I place my brewery tap room? And we're able to help you with that data analysis in the future of putting all this stuff together in a digestible format. A lot of this stuff now is using my data background and data modeling to kind of put together. And we hope to have that product to brewers and venues and restaurant owners in the future, not on a larger scale, but on a smaller local scale as well. For Untappd business customers that use our platform, we do have analytics in the platform itself that show you demographic information, what beers are trending around you don't have on your menu, things of that nature. But for breweries, this is very important to be able to figure out what the next style is. We hope to have more of this stuff in the future in 2021 to be able to see how that looks out. So hopefully I answered a lot of your questions there. Again, if it's something if I missed for you guys, happy to tweet me on Twitter at at Greg Avola is my username. You can also follow me on Untappd as well. Love to see what you're drinking out there at Greg Avola as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and hope you found this interesting. And yeah, thanks, everybody. Cheers.